It's the 1-2 punch with the Martini Henry. Ever since the December 2016 patch, where they basically nerfed this gun, you pretty much have to be ready to pull out your sidearm, as I did just there, and get that second hit on the enemy player if you're not within the exact sweet spot range and you're not hitting, or I should say, or you're not hitting an upper torso or headshot with the Martini Henry. This weapon has had some modifications to it that have made a lot of people pretty upset. This was one of the most powerful weapons in the game, and now, as you can see, you're going to get a lot of hit markers that aren't nearly as high damage as they would have been prior to this particular patch. Now, me personally, it's obnoxious. I think it's annoying, but I can kind of understand why DICE did this, because frankly I think the Martini Henry was overplayed and a little bit overpowered. Yeah, it was incredibly challenging previously, and it's still incredibly challenging, even more so now than it was before. But I think that adds somewhat to the appeal of it, quite honestly. It's a weapon that takes an incredible amount of skill, and in spite of me not having an incredible amount of skill, I'm starting to get pretty good with it. I'm starting to figure out just how to actually play with it, how to stay around the outside edges of their actual combat so that I can, spot players and start taking them out one at a time. But really, what I wanted to do was to take this thing out for a spin. The Nerftini Henry, as I'm calling it now, is a weapon that I think still deserves a lot of respect in spite of what a lot of other players are saying about it at this point. It's still pretty darn powerful, it's still incredibly fun to use, but you gotta get used to that 1-2 punch where you hit him once with the Martini Henry and then you pull out your sidearm to finish him. I'm a big fan of the M1911, as I've talked about before. It's an incredibly powerful handgun, it's got a good magazine size, and it's got a very fast reload rate, so it's all around just a very well-balanced, very powerful handgun that you can use to do that 1-2 punch where you hit him with the Henry, and then you take out your sidearm in order to hit him again. Now, you're going to see throughout this video a lot of body shots that would have been probably close to kills, if not actual kills previously. I'm going to get a lot of 75s, a lot of 60s, even into some 80s. It's pretty rare, though, that you're going to see some 90s. I mean, right there I got an 89. Had to pull out my sidearm again in order to get that final 100 kill. But I think overall, this weapon is still very playable if you are willing to take the time to learn how to play it. I know a lot of other YouTubers are saying that they really don't recommend playing it anymore, and I can completely understand that, honestly. It's not nearly as easy to kill people as it was prior to the December 2016 patch. That being said, though, I think DICE has a history of kind of over-nerfing and then correcting in the future. I mean, you can see that with the mortars that they patched a couple of times already. The very first patch for mortars, it really nerfed the mortars. They were just basically neutered. I mean, they were really taken down so that they were almost useless. And then in the same December 2016 patch, well, the mortars got a bit of a buff added back to them. DICE realized that they had kind of overstepped what they had really intended to do, and they took it back a little bit. So I'm hoping that in the future we'll see the same thing happening with the Martini Henry as the game continues to get updates and continues to be rebalanced over time based on actual stats from actual gameplay. That's one thing that I really do enjoy about DICE, quite honestly. They have a really good history in spite of some major problems with Battlefield 4 and me, frankly, selling the game because it was a disaster when it first launched. They've got a good history of continuing to support games long term. I mean, look at Battlefront, for example, Star Wars Battlefront. That game has been out for well over a year now, and they're still continuing to release content for it. They just released a Rogue One patch for it, downloadable content for it. For example, it's a great game, it's a great company overall. They do a good job of paying attention to what the community wants, but also using the statistics and information that they have from their own servers. Of course, they're going to collect data on absolutely everything. They're going to know everything that everyone has ever done, and they're going to use that to aggregate information and to create statistical analysis to show which weapons are getting too many kills too frequently, which weapons are overpowered essentially, being played too often. They're going to nerf those weapons a little. They're going to buff other weapons in order to bring them up and get them to more of a playable state. We've seen that happening with the support class quite a bit. The support class has received several buffs, including accuracy changes as well as damage and other aspects of the weapons that the support class gets. And overall, I think the game is greatly improved since the patch has been released. I've had fewer issues with the game. It's generally been more enjoyable, in spite of the Martini Henry, which is my personal favorite weapon, being nerfed quite a bit. But I'm getting used to it, and I'm having fun. I'm starting to use my secondary weapons, I'm starting to use my grenades and my gadgets more often in order to get the extra little edge that I need with the nerfed Henry, but it's still an enjoyable weapon. And if you are looking for a challenge, I do recommend using it still. I think it's an incredibly enjoyable experience if you take the time to really learn how to do it. That being said, there are some weapons for the Scout class that are simply going to be easier to do some real damage with. You're going to have a better time if you're looking for that more aggressive, really in the action kind of play style where you want to have a lot of rounds to pop off very quickly. The Henry, with its one bullet and manual reload, as you're seeing over and over again, really requires patience and requires you to be not in the middle of the action. This is not an up-close and personal weapon. You're going to need a sidearm and some frags and everything else that you can imagine for that aspect of the game, which is why I think a lot of people just don't want to play this class. They don't want to have that kind of camping patience that I tend to play in this game. They don't really want to deal with that slow reload time and that, frankly, big nerf that they just put into the game. But, as I've said a dozen times already in this video, it's still a ton of fun. So let's sit back and relax for a few more minutes here while I show, frankly, what is some of my best gameplay on the Martini Henry.
Laggiù! Un assaltatore nemico!
We have taken objective Charlie.
Vedo un assaltatore!
We are losing objective Buster.
Ho visto un medico!
We have taken objective Charlie.
Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up, drop some love in the comments, definitely do subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.
Siamo sotto attacco! Manteniamo...
We are losing objective butter.
Here we go!